Hello everyone and welcome to today's video presentation on scheduling using the Hatsize portal system. I'm already logged into the environment and I have the rights to do scheduling. As you can see here, I'm being presented with a list of those events that are upcoming or are in progress. If I wanted to see any historical events, I could use a little drop down here and get over to the historical items and look those up. But to create a new event, it's fairly simple. I just go ahead and create new. You'll then be presented with a list of what we call templates or lab configurations, and these would be the different starting points for the systems that the students would use for a particular course. In this case, I'll always use our Demo Maximus course, and then go ahead and click on the Continue button. At this point, it's bringing up a little bit of the information that I need for the system to create scheduling, and here you go. So for today's presentation, let's make the assumption that we're going to give it a title. You don't have to give it a title. It's an optional field. It would always start with Demo Maximus as the template name, giving you kind of the idea of what the starting course would look like. But in this case, let's say the event is running in Boston, and we know for a fact that the instructor is going to be a Mr. Slate, and we'll let him, and then also let's put in the information that we know this is for the ABC company, so that we can, put some indication that this happens to be in a client event, whatever information that you find necessary for you, you could put that in here. If you maintain different organizations or groups in the system, you could change those by using this pull down. But other than that, we're done with the top section. Let's move into the actual scheduling area. Here's where you actually specify the number of students for an event. In this case, let's go ahead. We don't need 15 seats. Let's just go ahead and put in 6. We can also set the number of assistants that we want in an event. An assistant is very similar to an instructor, but the assistant does not get equipment assigned to them typically, and they can then log into the system and manage student systems, help, watch over the shoulder, basic crowd control, just like an instructor, so they can kind of help pitch in with some of the lab exercise if need be. So imagine if you have a large class of 20 or 30 students, you may need to have a second set of eyes, ears, and hands to kind of help work with that. You can add an assistant there. By default, though, if you leave it as one and don't specify one, our support team will be added so they can jump into the lab and give your instructor any help or students help if they should need it. All right, let's go ahead and pick our start time. Oh, before we do that, let's talk about the early access for the instructor. If you want to give your instructor time to come into the system before the students, you can set that here and go from there. So let's go ahead and give it a start time. Click on it. Let's go ahead and start it for the 17th. And let's give it a time that we actually want to start the event. These are broken down into 1 hour, or excuse me, 30-minute increments here. You can type in whatever time you want to. So for that one, I went ahead and picked there. We'll go ahead and pick the class to end on the 21st. And because it's ending, let's go ahead and have it end at, I don't know, 2 o'clock p.m. just to make sure. And again, here you can see I'm actually typing the information in. So if you want to type it in, you can do that as well, or you could use the little drop down, whichever you feel more comfortable with. We're going to try to get our students out of here by noon, but I'll go ahead and set the end time to be 2 p.m. just to give myself a little bit of leeway there. Once you do that and schedule it, the systems are available 24 hours a day. So from that 8 a.m. on Monday through Friday at 2 p.m., the systems would be available to our students. And they would have access to them. So if they want to come in after hours or to continue the labs because they got drawn away or couldn't complete them, they could come back in. And then finally, if it's not in the same time zone that you are, you can see here by default it's Eastern time because that's my time zone. But if you were to set it scheduling this for, say, Pacific time or overseas someplace, you wouldn't have to do the math. You could just pick the time zone and the system would do the calculation for you. But in this case, since Boston's in the US Eastern, I'll leave it there. And then finally, we can go ahead and pick our data center. So if we want to select a data center that's closest to us, if I want to go to Toronto, for example, and do it out of the East Coast, if I want to do a Singapore or Frankfurt, I could pick the data center. But for this demo course, I'll just go ahead and spin it up in Calgary, just primarily because we have more systems in the Calgary area, and for a demo, I'm just going to do it there. The last piece is you have the ability of setting a presence detector, which will send an email off to an administrator or the instructor to let them know when students do log into the system if you want to track that. And then finally, we have down here the ability to add a virtual classroom link. So if you're using a WebEx or GoToMeeting, Adobe Connect, whatever, you can add a link button into the system that will give students direct access into your Adobe Connect or WebEx GoToMeeting. And you can set that up to be the same time zone, start and end time as the lab itself, or you can adjust it if you want to. All right, with that, let's go ahead and click the Continue button. and it will create, excuse me, the create button, and it will go off and provision the systems for my one instructor, no systems for the assistant, and then for the 6 students, it'll go off and save my systems for me in the Calgary Data Center to ensure that I have the system set up and reserved for me. The system on spin up time will know how long it takes to create the lab, so it will start ahead of that 8 a.m. time so that when 8 a.m. does arrive, students will be able to directly jump into the lab. The next stage is the ability to assign your instructor, your assistants, and your students if you know who they are. So in this case, I know Mr. Slate's going to be my instructor, so I can use what we call the quick find. I can start typing his name, and it will pop up and show me his name. There you go, and I've added Mr. Slate as the instructor. I'm going to leave the support team there as the assistant so they can get into the system. If I didn't want them in, I could hit the delete button and they'd go away. And then for the students, I know who some of my students are, so I'll go ahead and add them. And I know they're from the Bedrock area, so let me go ahead and add my folks. If you can catch the theme here for the Flintstones, there you go. I'll go ahead and tag all of them and then remove Mr. Slate because he's already assigned as the instructor. And there we go. I have now assigned those students. 4 out of my 6 slots have been assigned, and I can go ahead and save that. Now, a couple of notes on users. You can have users do a self-registration to an event by logging into the system, creating their own account, and by using an event code. The event code is found over here on the Event Summary tab. So if I go into the Edit Event, you'll see every event here has this little event code, and if I had given that to a user, they could use that to self-register. We also have the ability for you to upload client accounts, user accounts via the CSV file. You can do that as well. And finally, we do have an integrated API, so if you want to integrate this into your learning management system, you can do that very easily as well, and then create the users and have them create the accounts, create the events. You can do all that kind of information. All right, so our event is running. You can see it's scheduled, number of events, number of students, the start and end time. Here's my virtual classroom. If I wanted to add any additional links to other resources, I could add those right here. And this just gives me the ability to put in any HTML links that I want to any other product and make that available whenever I want to. I can add that. The final piece of this is the ability I can also add content. So every one of our courses by default brings across with it all the templates. If you've defined materials at the template level, when you create an event, it'll add those materials to the event. It could be descriptions, PDFs, whatever you wanted to have there. But if you wanted to add specific materials to this event, the instructor can do this, or an assistant can do this. Anybody can do scheduling, can go ahead and click edit and add additional things that are specific only to this event. So if you want to bring some additional materials to this, you can do that as well. I can click on the support tab, which will give me the information on the system deployments, letting me know if you have that access, which systems it's running on. It's more of a technical thing, their tech support team, who scheduled it, all that kind of good stuff. And finally, I can cancel the lab if I so choose to do that. If I go back to the event itself and the assigned users, I have one other option is once I have my users and my rosters, I have the ability of sending an email to, say, the instructor or a coordinator, letting them know who's enrolled in the event, and therefore they can get that information via an email. We can send that out too. All right, when I'm done scheduling, I can go ahead and go back to the event management. You'll see I now have a new event for Mr. Slate running in the Boston area for the ABC company. I also have the ability of viewing this calendar viewing these things in calendar mode. You can see here the blue is the upcoming event, the green are the events that are currently running, and the purple would be the events that are past. And if I mouse over each one of those, it gives me a little bit more information about the event so that I can see what potentially is more information without actually having to go into the event itself. And to go back to the overall list, I can click there. Well, I hope this overview has been helpful to you. Understand how our scheduling system works. I appreciate your time today and have yourself a great day.